Today we're going to be doing a video on countertransference versus transference with a LCSW test prep question, including more information on countertransference versus transference. Welcome back to my channel, Mental Health with Melissa. I'm Melissa. I am a licensed clinical therapist, an LCSW, a clinical supervisor, and a PhD psychology research student. Today we're going to be doing a video on countertransference versus transference with a LCSW test prep question, including more information on countertransference versus transference. If you're new here, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more content like this. I make videos every single Sunday and Wednesday, and I've been putting out a lot of different LCSW test prep question videos. Subscribing to my channel helps me get information out to our mental health communities of color, and to those that are interested in the mental health and behavioral health fields. So today, like I said, we're going to be discussing transference and countertransference. So if you're interested in learning more, please stay tuned. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it. You know the drill if you've been watching my channel. I like to read the question, and if you want to pause it and then try to figure out what the answer is, and then afterwards you can compare yours to mine and then see kind of where you're at in terms of critical thinking skills when it comes to test prep questions. Which of the following statements best describes countertransference with the client-therapist relationship? Option A, the displacement of feelings from client to therapist. Okay, well, this is a pretty vague option here, the displacement of feelings from client to therapist. So this kind of actually seems like it may be transference, but not exactly. There's a couple things missing from if this were to be exactly transference, because it just says displacing feelings from client to therapist. So it's not a really strong answer for this or to really describe transference. So let's look at option B. Option B, when a therapist has an emotional response to a client, including both conscious and unconscious feelings due to past experiences. Okay, so this seems like a very strong answer, because countertransference is pretty much just that. It's when if you're a therapist or some sort of behavioral health or mental health provider, and you're working with a client, and a client either reminds you of somebody or of yourself, and because of that you have these feelings that may be affecting your dynamic in the therapeutic process. Option C, a defense mechanism. This does not describe a defense mechanism. Based on what I just said, countertransference is the definition here in option B. Or D, a phenomenon in therapy. So that's definitely not it. I mean, it can be a phenomenon in therapy, but that doesn't actually give us the definition of the best definition of countertransference within the client-therapist relationship. So B is going to be your strongest answer here. And again, countertransference is pretty much just that. And I want to give you some examples here of countertransference. So if you see here, countertransference can be a clinician offering advice versus listening to the client's experience. So why this may be an example of countertransference. So as therapists and social workers, we really want to play the role as somebody that listens as opposed to provides our personal advice in the matter, because when we're giving advice, that's coming from our own experiences, not the client's experience. So just as mentioned up in the question that we looked up before, it's when a therapist has an emotional response to a client due to their own past experiences. So this is a really prime example of countertransference. Another example is a clinician inappropriately disclosing personal experiences during the session. So I've mentioned in another one of my videos that a little self-disclosure on the part of the therapist or the clinician is good if you're using it intentionally and it's going to enhance the therapeutic process. But it has to be very intentional, and there has to be a lot of awareness as to why you're doing it. So if you're doing it inappropriately and you don't have a lot of intention in doing it, that's definitely going to impact the session in a negative way, because it's kind of similar to offering advice, in that you're using your own experiences not to enhance the session, but because of unresolved issues in what may be happening in the clinician's life. Another example is a clinician does not have boundaries with a client. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the other two things up here. If a clinician is offering advice, unsolicited advice, and disclosing experiences without intention, then those are clearly not having boundaries with the client. So an example of transference is when a person or a client directs some of their feelings or desires for another person to an entirely different person. So an example of transference in therapy is when you observe characteristics of your father in a new therapist. So say you're the client and you observe characteristics of your father in your new therapist, and you attribute fatherly feelings to this new therapist, and they can be bad or good feelings. So say your client comes to your initial session and you start talking about how you, in your informed consent, how you don't, you have a no-show policy and you don't allow more than 3 no-shows or something like that. And then your client says, you know what, my dad, you're just like my dad. My dad always would tell me that I only had 3 strikes and then I'm out, or something like that. And then so the client then says, you know, I can't see you anymore as my therapist because you just remind me so much of my dad. So that's an example of transference. Countertransference is kind of the other way around of things. So again, kind of like the examples that I gave earlier, like if that same client came in and the therapist said that this client really reminds them of their father, and the therapist as a result started giving advice to the client kind of similar to the advice that they would give their father. So that would be countertransference, and something very inappropriate that would definitely require consultation and clinical supervision. Alrighty, well, I hope that video was helpful. If you have any comments at all, please don't forget to leave them in the comments section below. Until next time, managing mental health matters.